Welcome to Season 2 of Lead Speak, where we continue to empower the current and the next generation of SLP leaders in public education. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a seasoned pro, or somewhere in between, this season is packed with insight tailored just for you. I'm your co-host, Nathalie Lebrun.
And I'm Judy Rich. Welcome to Season 2 of Lead Speak, school-based SLP podcast.
Hi, Lead Speak community. This is Nathalie. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a super special guest today, and his name is Perry Flynn. He's an educational consultant out of North Carolina, and he gets to influence and advise school districts all throughout that state in best practices for speech-language pathology. He also gets to spend his time training the next generation of speech-language pathologists at the university level. Perry, Judy, and I cover a whole bunch of topics today, including his emphasis on the benefits of developing relationships with other leaders in your school districts outside of speech-language pathology, and how that can really help build trust and build some really great systems for everybody to benefit. He also talks about the financial and non-financial incentives that school districts can use to attract and retain top talent. Then we dive into the topic of what happens when school districts aren't responsive to the needs of current and potential speech-language pathologists, and what happens when they are no longer able to attract and keep top talent. Of course, we'll certainly dive into the topic of artificial intelligence, as we've had this entire season, and how school districts can use AI to really benefit their SLPs. And last but certainly not least, Perry will share with us how taking the initiative to blend together topics that interest you may actually lead to formal and informal leadership opportunities within your district and beyond, so you can build the best role for yourself as a speech-language pathologist in schools. Like we do for every episode, we would certainly appreciate you sharing our episode with your friends, your colleagues, and even your leadership as a means to broaden our community and to welcome new members. Now, let's get into the episode. How's it going, Judy?
Really good, Nathalie. How about you?
I'm doing really, really well. Hey, I am really excited about today's episode because we were able to get one of your very dear and near friends to join us today.
Yep. I'm really excited and honored to have Perry Flynn on our podcast today. Perry, I'm going to just jump right in and say that we met each other kind of in the middle of our leadership journeys on an ASHA committee or 2 or 5 or 10 through the years. And from that affiliation have just really developed a mutual fan club with each other in terms of our what we love about speech-language pathology and where we've been in terms of school-based SLP and university SLP work and training, and then also volunteer leadership. So one of the first things I want to start with is we all talk about how you have the coolest job in the world. And so tell us about that first, current situation, and then just as little spoiler alert, then I'm going to have you back up and talk about your journey and how you became a speech-language pathologist. But first, coolest job in the universe.
I do. It is such a pleasure to be with you guys today and be with my old friend, Judy Rudebush Rich, now Mrs. Richie Rich, and my new friend, Nathalie. So thanks so much for including me in your podcasts. I do have the coolest job. So the University of North Carolina at Greensboro owns me, and for them, I co-teach the clinical practice class with some other clinical educators, and then I also co-teach the school-age language class with Alan Kamai, if that name means anything to you. He is a great god of speech-language pathology, and I am always honored to be co-teaching with him. So then really the majority of what I do for the university is clinical supervision. And I do that in 2 therapeutic horseback riding programs. So we practice true hippotherapy, which is occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech language pathology, using the horse, the movement of the horse, and the environment around the horse as a vehicle to deliver speech and language goals. So 2 mornings a week, I am working mostly with little kids with augmented communication devices while they're riding ponies. So
That is
that
amazing.
I know
That's
it's a super
just fun.
cool, very unique part of my job. I'm a certified therapeutic horseback riding instructor. So that's what I do for UNCG. And then the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, the State Department of Education in North Carolina, buys out half of my time to be the consultant to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction in the area of speech language pathology, which is a big, long, fancy title to say I'm the head of speech pathology for the public schools of North Carolina. So I try to be very accessible to all the speech language pathologists in the schools of North Carolina. So if they have a question, they email me. I provide a lot of continuing education. Post COVID now, we're back in school districts. So I travel to all across the state to school districts to provide continuing education on topics like feeding and swallowing in the schools, the speech pathologist role in MTSS, um, uh, auditory processing in schools, just pretty much every topic that speech pathologists in North Carolina schools deal with. I've got a presentation on, and so I do those mostly these days in conjunction with another consultant. So I work with the consultant for complex disabilities a lot. I work with the autism consultants. I do a lot with the OT and PT consultants. We love the interprofessional practice. North Carolina really promotes that, and so I get to work with super smart colleagues all the time. I influence legislation. I lobby to get raises for speech pathologists and improved working conditions. I try to help school districts to recruit and retain the best and the brightest out of our graduate training programs here in North Carolina. So that's probably enough. But
Well, that's pretty cool, Perry, because it sounds like without you sounding boastful or prideful or anything, it sounds like you're the Renaissance man of speech language pathology.
I, I really enjoy that. Every day is a different day. I get to do so many different activities, and it keeps life interesting. I get to work with kids still, so I'm not just administrative. Uh, it, it is the best of all worlds. You can say Renaissance speech language pathologist, but it's really just a super cool job um, that encompasses many aspects of our profession.
Well, and it also speaks to the fact that in speech language pathology, if that is your career pathway and you love the profession, you have so many options for
Yeah,
working your passions.
right,
Like, who knew when you started out that you were going to be doing hippotherapy and aided communication with little people on horses,
right, right.
right?
Yeah.
During this time of your career. Very awesome. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a speech language pathologist.
Okay, so that's an interesting story too. I went to an all boys Catholic high school in Pittsburgh, Central Catholic High School, my alma mater, proud of it. So our junior year, we had to take an aptitude test to see what we were good at and what we might pursue. And it said I should be a priest, a veterinarian, or a speech language pathologist. And you see which one of those won out. I did know the ins and outs of the other two. And I went to Brother Clement Smith after I got the results, and we explored speech language pathology and both decided that that would be a really good thing for me to do. And so then I looked at schools. I wanted to be away from Pittsburgh. Pitt had a great program, but I wanted to be away from Pittsburgh. And horseback riding has always been an important part of my life. So I wanted to go someplace too that had access to really excellent training and high quality hunter horses. And so I I really wanted to go to William and Mary. That was my first choice. They don't have speech language pathology there, so that sort of knocked that out. And then I had a really good riding situation close to there, but the speech pathology thing, I would have had to do the 3 year, master's degree thing. And I really wanted to work, like I wanted to get out and work. So I didn't want to waste time in graduate school. So the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I work right now, had a really good speech language pathology program, always has. And my riding coach's brother had a farm in Southern Pines, which is about an hour and a half south of the university here. And so I worked it out that I could come to school during the week and go down to Southern Pines on weekends and ride. And that's what I did most every weekend in undergraduate school and then graduate school too. But then there was a farm here in Greensboro that turned out to be a really excellent place for me. So I quit going to Southern Pines and stayed here. So UNCG really had all the worlds of Perry collided in one place here, and it turned out to be a great situation for me. So that was probably the very long version of what you asked, but it's kind of interesting. So
I think that is so interesting because, like you say, the worlds of Perry converged, right? And it seems to still be true today, where all the hats that you get to wear is kind of like a beautiful mix of all the things that you have passion for within our profession, but also outside of a professional as well.
absolutely, yeah.
That's super, super special. So when I heard about your role as this acting consultant for public schools, I'm like, oh, that sounds really snazzy. I like this because all the topics that you mentioned that you help support and advocate for and lead through are absolutely happening here in Texas, right? It's
Sure.
not
Yeah.
just like a North Carolina thing. It's definitely happening all throughout the United States, right?
Yeah.
So, what I want to know about your current role is how do you help school districts navigate the issue of others not really fully understanding what SLPs do? Because that's something that's come up in quite of
Sure.
our conversations in the past.
Yeah.
Is this need for leadership above us, whether it's your executive, your superintendents, even the community, better understanding our roles in schools? How do you help school districts navigate that?
Yeah, great question. So I think the first way that I help school districts navigate that is just my presence in North Carolina. There are many states that don't have a disorder area consultant, and that has been one of the great things about North Carolina. They have valued that all along. So there's an OT consultant, a PT consultant, speech language consultants, autism consultants. So so we have somebody that knows the discipline to be able to advocate at the State Department. So my work is sort of a middle position. I advocate up to our director of exceptional children and the state superintendent, and even sometimes the legislature. The legislature in North Carolina controls our salary. And so when there are opportune times, like people want me to advocate every year for a salary increase, every year. And there just aren't opportune times every year for that to go on. But when there are, and my pulse on the legislature and our advocates tell me it's an appropriate time, I'm able to rally the troops sort of, and we've had success in doing that, getting grassroots advocacy from speech language pathologists in the trenches, and the legislature has listened to that. on some occasions, not every occasion, but some occasions. So I'm able to advocate up, and I'm able to advocate down to the local EC directors and for speech language pathologists, truly in the trenches. But I think that my title holds some power, holds some sway, and so it's appropriate to use that in the right times and places. It's not appropriate to use it sometimes.
Yeah, you do. And the other thing I appreciate about the story you're telling about North Carolina is the cross-disciplinary approach from the state level, because you mentioned 5 or 6 different folks that you routinely collaborate with to message out important information together. Um, and that's also something.
Yeah, I'm so lucky to have those people I do a lot of work with the complex disabilities consultant, and it is so great to have his input into what I do. And I think I add value to the presentations that we do together for his people. It, it just ratchets up the accountability and impact, I think, to have multi-dimensional or multi-disciplines having input into, and we do that with guidance documents too. The guidance documents that we put out, they are vetted through multiple disciplines, and that is a beauty of North Carolina that has always been. The state consultants, the SEACDC group, State Education Agency, Communications Disabilities Council. So you can Google search that website too, and all the state consultants in speech language pathology who exist now contribute resources to that website.
I'm going to ask you a question that hopefully can crystallize something into this practical wisdom that you're so good at gifting. In your experience, tell me 2 or 3 things that lead SLPs can do to foster this collaboration between SLPs and other groups, or SLPs and school leadership, in order to advance our practice. So just 2 or 3 tips that come to mind about what a lead SLP could do.
Okay, lead SLP. So on Perry Flynn's website, there is a job description, an exhaustive job description of what a lead SLP can do. Now, no lead SLP does all of those things that are on that job description, but is just a laundry list of things you can do. I think when you were asking the question there, a really important thing for lead SLPs to do is to know their counterparts at that level. There are some, so we have Charlotte and Raleigh, they fluctuate, the 22nd, 23rd largest school districts in the country here in North Carolina. And there have been occasions, so I talked a little bit about our feeding and swallowing philosophy and training here in North Carolina. So the first time that we did that, we asked people to come as teams with an occupational therapist, a speech language pathologist, the head of child nutrition, and the head of nursing. And in those school districts, Charlotte and Raleigh, those people had never met each other before they came to that training. So, I think the first most important thing, and that's what we try to model at the State Department in North Carolina, is interprofessional practice. So find out, and work with the lead OT, PT. There are many things that resources could be shared around there. Even a lead related service providers meeting where all those people come together and problem solve about, maybe the individual challenges of that particular public school unit. Whatever you want to call them these days. Public school unit is what we call a school district these days in North Carolina, PSU. So there's one thing, to just know all the other players. and have be able to have some talk time with them, and even with the director of exceptional children there too, um, have speech meetings. There may be like lead speech language pathologists, but collect people together once a month and make it a continuing education opportunity too. If most school districts, if you write up, for the human resource department of the school district, something that would yield a continuing education credit, you can build that over the school year. When I was the lead speech pathologist for a school district in North Carolina, we did that. We had a monthly speech meeting every year. We had a day-long agenda. I got our director of exceptional children to value that time away from kids. I know that is increasingly difficult for you, but if you don't try and do it, you're never going to be able to do it. And I'd keep beating that drum if they turn you down right away. But make sure that whoever makes that decision knows that it's not going to be sitting around drinking coffee and eating donuts, that you have an agenda, that you'll produce an agenda. It's continuing education. There's so many courses like that ASHA offers that you could pick ASHA courses, or if uh, one of your speech pathologists is particularly interested in stuttering, have them do a mini workshop on stuttering, or whatever people's. We always had sort of sharing time about the latest and greatest activities that you were using. And so people brought things, and sometimes we would do a make and take activity. There are all kinds of things that you can do to very constructively fill a day. Anyway, so there's another thing: providing continuing education through monthly speech meetings, or uh, whatever frequency you want to have them. So there are two: connecting with all the players, having speech meetings, and then maybe sparking people to advocate in their schools. MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, is so vastly different from school to school. Even in a school district, it varies a great deal. So come up with whatever the school district feels like the speech pathologist role in MTSS is, and get every speech pathologist to do that in their schools. Try to unify and make uniform some of the things that everyone is doing.
Okay, here's what I heard. Here's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Connect with people at your level
Yeah.
and get to know them, spend talk time with them, and do that on a consistent, scheduled basis.
Absolutely.
I heard you say learn together,
Yeah.
learn about speech language pathology issues together, whether it's at a monthly meeting or some districts have like a district professional learning retreat, and speech people work really hard to cull their group away
Sure.
from general ed
Right.
and have their own retreat during the district retreat, but learn together. So know people, so be together, learn together, and then create consistency so that SLPs have an identity with
Absolutely. Yeah.
procedures and the things that are going on in general in the district, like MTSS or um, a statement about literacy or feeding and swallowing. Yeah, creates an identity for SLP.
Well, like the feeding and swallowing thing, to have one consistent unified message that everybody in the district. Yeah. So now a couple of things from what you said, I'm going to say some more things. So yeah, speech pathologists are so used to acting as islands unto themselves in schools. Like most schools have one speech pathologist and that's it. So an opportunity for them to get together and form a community of practice is so important, so that they feel a community there. And then another thing that lead speech language pathologists can do is really work with their district, probably their director of exceptional children, but maybe their human resource people too, about making sure that work environments for speech pathologists, caseload caps, all are welcoming of speech pathologists, and Possibly even advocating for sign-on bonuses. Recruitment and retention is so important now. Practically every school district, even in North Carolina, and we work really hard to do that, practically every school district would hire at least one and even maybe more. But some of our really big school districts have done a fantastic job of recruitment and retention packages, and they have very few vacancies. And
So retention,
yeah,
right? And hiring. I mean, whenever I hear those words, I think that it's like a collective sigh of like, oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like you're circling the drain. How to attract
Yeah.
people and how to keep your people.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that when you step into school districts in North Carolina, you get faced with a lot of like, how do we attract people here and how do we keep our folks here,
Yeah,
right? How do we keep them happy? How do we keep them from leaving our district to turn to a different practice area setting, or even looking at other career options, right?
sure.
So could you share with us some strategies that you have seen being successful in the school districts that you've gone to
Yeah,
when it comes
absolutely.
to staff hiring and
Mhm.
staff retention?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I'll start just a little off center of your topic, but we have a caseload cap in North Carolina of 50 students. And so that helps. And many, I will say most even, of the caseloads in North Carolina are below 50. But it breaks my heart to tell you that there are some caseloads that well exceed 50 in this day and time, and they didn't always, but they do now. There are just such vacancies, and for a variety of reasons, but that breaks my heart to tell you. But here are some things that people have done. It's not always about money. It's not always about money. a, a really great thing that many districts did, and my district did, the high school that I worked at had a secretary that was the case manager for every student, every exceptional student at that school. She was the case manager, and she was fantastically organized. And she would say, Perry, your 3-year eval on this kid is due in 1 month. And then she would say, Perry, it is due in 3 weeks. And she would say, Perry, it is due in 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I'll get it done. But anyway, and she did all the paperwork that she could do ethically, and we would contribute our stuff. So if a school district would do that, like that's a tremendous help to do that kind of paperwork, set up the meetings, all those kinds of things. That was super helpful, and it was one secretary's salary for all the exceptional children's teachers at that school. That it was amazing. And there are some school districts in North Carolina that have that for all the exceptional children's teachers at a given school. So there's one thing. Making sure that people don't exceed caseload caps. And when they're getting close, do what you can to either contract for those services or hire additional staff, those kinds of things. Having a guaranteed once a month speech meeting where people can come together and be a community and get free continuing education credits to keep up their ASHA Cs and their state license. That's really important. Providing some money for them to go to continuing education activities. So my director always paid for anybody, any of the speech pathologists, to go to our state Department of Public Instruction convention. But she also paid for two people every year to go to ASHA, wherever ASHA was. And it was a lottery. Like if you wanted to go, I always got to go as the lead SLP. But she would pay for two other people. And if you wanted to go, we put your name in a hat. We drew the names out of the hat. All those are just such goodwill things that and I could use those as selling points. We did not have sign-on bonuses. We had a pretty decent supplement above above what the state pay scale was. So that was helpful. But all those other things, operating on a workload model, not simply a caseload model, so that speech pathologists feel valued about all the other stuff they do, like working in MTSS, working on literacy teams, providing on behalf of services for kids, direct services, and some people really want to do bus duty. They say that's a great opportunity to facilitate carryover, but a lot of people don't think that that's a valuable time. So, not engaging in those things that take us away from really what speech pathologists do. And I say to people, they're paying you a relative ton of money to open doors for kids. That's not a good use of, I don't think in most cases, that's a good use of our time to walk up and down the aisles at cafeteria time, at lunchtime. You could be writing IEPs or something during that.
So Perry, in one of our warm up conversations and in prior conversations not related to the podcast, you and I have talked a lot through the years about workload, using a workload model, and that can mean very different things in very different situations because it's very situational in order to get things balanced for your students. But
Absolutely.
as it relates to recruiting and retention, talk to us a little bit more about the districts in North Carolina that you see that really fully um, implement a workload model compared to those that are more restricted or rigid and don't quite do it as
Right,
well.
sure. So we have a workload model in well, we have a hybrid model, a caseload workload. We have a caseload cap of 50. If you exceed that caseload cap, the the caseload that exceeds that must complete our workload form. The workload form is on my website. It is partially derived from ASHA's workload model, but we have done some things to ASHA's workload model that make it more tailored to North Carolina. Anyway, so it is a recruitment and retention tool. Like speech pathologists, the lead speech pathologists really know what their staff are engaged in. And if people are spending, like 50% of their time in documentation activities, like the lead SLP can investigate that a little bit and have a conversation with that person and see why they're investing so much of their time in that. Or if they're investing a great deal of time in MTSS, in non special education activities, the lead SLP can help tweak that and get them, more involved in really the the person that pays us is special education. So we are sort of most beholden to special education. We want to do stuff in general education, but really our primary responsibilities are. So it allows whoever, the director of exceptional children, the lead SLP, to be able to view the activities that the individual caseload is involved in and tweak that to be a better working situation for all the individual SLPs. And I'm doing a presentation at the ASHA convention in Seattle on data that we collected from the lead SLPs about their use of our workload model. And I think the statistic is 38% of them who actually used the workload model were able to advocate successfully for additional FTEs, add additional staff, because the workload model proved to whomever, the superintendent or whatever, that they in fact did need more speech language pathologists. But if you don't use a workload model, you don't have that data. All you have is that they have 60 kids or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that 60 ARTIC kids are very different than 60 OGCOM kids. So the workload model in North Carolina has really helped lead SLPs advocate at the district level for some people got reduced duties because of it. Some people got increased pay or supplements because of using it. Some people got the addition of FTEs for using it. I have actually the stuff right here because I'm working on it for reduced duties, reduction of caseloads, redistribution of caseloads based on it, and advocacy for pay increases. But I think the number is 38% of people that actually used it got additional FTEs because of that. So I was
Yeah.
super happy to hear that.
And then they were able to, because of having kind of a healthy, dynamic, um, growing organization, they're able to recruit and fill their new FTE positions, right?
It is such a market economy right now with speech pathologists. Like it is uncensored competition these days. And you've got to come with a big deal to pull SLPs. Our young students are very savvy. Our students are very savvy about being good business people, and they, if they are not bound to one geographic area but want to stay in North Carolina, they're going to go to the places that offer big incentives. And several of the, not just the really big school districts, but several school districts, medium, small, large, are offering like a $10,000 sign-on bonus and a couple $1,000 recruitment, retention bonus, and additional supplements. And I hear people already saying, "Well, that won't work in my district. We won't do that." But you got to try. You got to try, and maybe it won't. Maybe it won't work with this particular administration. But these days, administration, especially in special education, turns over so frequently that maybe when you get a new lead SLP, it will work. Or when you get a new exceptional children's director, or when you get a new superintendent or director of human resources. So, maybe it won't work right now, but don't give up. Continue to try. And that's those districts that do that, for the most part, have none or very few vacancies. And it's not all about the money either. It's a combination of the working conditions, all the things that we've talked to up till this time, a workload model, continuing education, a community of practice, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it seems to me like using a workload model allows the leader the flexibility to do relational leadership, build trust, build a trusting climate and culture among the SLPs. And it's that relationship and feeling cared for and taken care of, along with being able to manage your job, that is the key to retention, in my observation.
Sure, it's so important. Yeah, it's so important. Just feeling heard and cared for. I'm sure your listeners really, really feel that. Like that makes them feel good about their work environment. If they have access to the lead, if they have access to their director, if they can share their concerns and their problems, and they're not just listened to, but they're heard. And people, there are some constraints, there are some monetary constraints, but so in North Carolina, the place that money has come from is Medicaid funds. So there's a reason to bill Medicaid, and there's a good use for it too. Those funds must come to the Exceptional Children's Department in North Carolina, and a majority of the funds are reaped by speech language pathology, so they should be sown in the speech pathology field too.
I wish that was the case here in Texas.
Yeah, right.
That's not how that
I
goes.
know.
And
Yeah.
that's a ongoing struggle for sure, where SLPs are like, why am I billing Medicaid? We call SHARs, when the money doesn't come back to our
Yeah.
purposes directly. They just go into a general fund.
It must come from, and that was a point of advocacy for the occupational therapy consultant, the physical therapy consultant, and myself. Is we advocated to Medicaid to put a memo out that said, if you are billing for our funds, they must go to Exceptional Children's. Now they go to Exceptional Children's. What the Exceptional Children's Department does with them is their
Yeah.
business. But before that memo came
Yeah.
out, they could go
Hey,
anywhere.
can we flip the script for a second and stay on the topic of retention?
Sure.
So you walk into a school district with your very fancy title, with lots of knowledge, and you have seen what happens when school districts make choices when it comes to keeping their staff and retention there, and keeping their staff, where word has gotten out to not go to that school district for XYZ reasons, right?
Yeah.
So what we've discovered, or what I've heard a lot from our listeners, is that they're taking our podcast and sending it to their leadership, and you're like, listen,
Absolutely.
it's true,
Sure.
Judy, true story. They're like, listen to this segment, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to take maybe an opportunity to talk to the executives in our school districts for a moment, Perry, and I want you to talk to them directly. What happens when a school district, coming really close to the camera, what happens when a school district, they lose their ability to attract folks because word's
Yeah.
gotten out?
So, yeah, word gets out absolutely that even though they offer a $10,000 sign-on bonus, this is not a good place to work. SLPs are not valued. They still have to serve 80 kids or something crazy like that. And people won't come there even for the $10,000 bonus. And then over time, so that is hard to get rid of. That bad reputation is hard to get rid of. So when if you are in districts where like people are starting to dribble away a little bit, people need to be proactive on that immediately and find out why people are dribbling away and um, put the finger in that dam before it breaks and all your speech pathologists leave, and then word is out. Word does get out. That's not a good place to work. They offer a bunch of money, but it's miserable. I don't want to go there, and graduate training programs get that too. Like the students come to us and say, hey, where would be your favorite district to work in, and where should I stay away from? And like I got to tell them the honest story there, and I can tell them both sides of that coin. So yeah, I would do a satisfaction survey of your staff and see what people are happy about, and continue that and grow that, and what are the challenges, and see if you can problem solve around those to eliminate those, and keep all your exceptional children staff happy. It's not just speech language pathologists, but special education teachers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, all are worth their weight in gold these days to find. So I think a satisfaction survey across the exceptional children's department, and then like be very reasonable about what a $50,000 sign-on bonus is not a reasonable thing, but and being very transparent about that too, like saying, here are the things that you all said that you wanted or needed or were good things or were bad things in our district, and here's what I can really try and do to. Even just that level of transparency, I think, is very comforting to staff.
But like you said, sometimes it's the non-financial stuff too,
Yeah, right.
right? So if you can work in a work from home
Sure.
benefit in some way, shape, or form, right? Things that are not financially tied, but just require the setting up of systems that are reasonable. And then also kind of figure out what you were saying at the very top of the show, like figuring out like when is it a good time to ask about this
Yeah, right.
versus that,
Sure.
right?
You have to bide your time and wait for a really opportune time to do it. And sometimes that's hard to like put the brakes on things. Another thing you said made me think of this. Some school districts are offering speech pathologists to have their kids come to their own school, and that is really attractive to violate the lines of the school district, and bring kids across school lines to come to their own school, and that's very attractive to some parents, and that might even overshadow a raise or an additional supplement to be able to have your kid at your own same school when you lived out of district. So just simple things like that can be very compelling.
Yeah, and I think they emerge from the group, though. If your children coming to the school where you work is valuable, it'll pop up in a needs assessment or a climate survey or a satisfaction survey.
Yep.
What will make it easier to work here? They'll say, I want my kids to come to school where I work, and then oh, I can start working on that when the time is right. So it's
Yep.
the relational thing. It's also hard to get traction without relationship. So when you're in a kind of a fractured system that is not moving towards excellence as fast as SLPs want them to move towards excellence, I would say to SLP leaders, build relationships, do some things that are visible that make people feel good, and then they won't be so negative. Change their mindset about how they talk about the district, and through time, it'll shift. It'll turn around if you've got the
Yeah.
relationships going, and people can trust you to know that you, as the lead SLP, are working on their behalf on the work conditions, on the caseload size
Right.
that's above the cap, on getting resources in faster to support or reconfigure caseloads, all the things that are available in North Carolina, or bringing Perry Flynn in to consult because things are horrible here. So
But it does. You said it takes time, and it does take time. But it's worthwhile to invest your time early and try and be preemptive before things get bad. Because once things get bad, word's going to be out, and it's going to take you so long to rebuild a speech department or trust in the clinicians that you have. It's bad.
yeah. All right. I want to change topics.
Sure.
Okay. I want to talk about artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Okay. So AI is becoming more integrated into schools. What do you think SLP leaders, what role do they have in adopting AI tools effectively for managing speech caseloads or for speech language therapy itself? So there's kind of two parts
Yeah.
to
Sure.
the AI thing, but just talk to us in general about what you've been involved with, because I'm sure you're doing training on that because you train on
Yes.
on Swallow, so you're training on AI, I'm
Right.
sure.
It's a very opportune time for your question because our Department of Public Instruction Conference on Exceptional Children is next week, and I am doing a brand new presentation on AI with our assistive technology consultant. And so here, this is very North Carolina specific, I will say. And I have not said this before, but North Carolina is a very site-based management state. The Department of Public Instruction provides a great deal of guidance. How that guidance is used in the school district is up to the school district.
Mhm,
So I just need to sort of say that as a disclaimer.
mhm,
But the guidance that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is providing on artificial intelligence is cautionary and to be very careful about ethics in the use of AI.
mhm,
So we're cautioning people to not use it for like writing goals or writing present levels of performance or writing assessment reports because there are some confidentiality issues there. It Artificial intelligence learns about things and can learn about kids, even individual kids, and you don't want it to learn about those things. So, like procedural compliance kinds of things, don't we say don't use it for those kinds of things. The things to use it for in an ethical way are things like writing lesson plans, analyzing assessment data, sort of combining it, analyzing language samples, providing some accurate feedback on productions of either language or speech sound disorders. And translations, it's good at translating. If you don't have a translator, it's good at translating to a different language. So you might use AI as your language. tailoring your your lessons to the interests of kids. So like one of the examples I'm going to use in our presentation is I love the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. And that is a poem that like some middle school teachers would use as reading or poetry in a middle or high school. And so then I'm going to say this kid really likes horses and we're going to use the poem. So, and here are his goals. What are some activities that would work in this? And it spits out like amazing activities that you can do using that poem that meet the speech and language needs of that kid. So, writing lesson plans tailored to the interests of the kids and tailored to like a topic or a theme that is going on in a classroom.
Or
Uh,
and a language level.
yeah, and the language level, right? And you can say use the North Carolina Standard Course of Study goals for third grade, and it'll do. It's amazing. Like I am not a techie guy, and in preparing for this presentation, it's been amazing. Like what it can spit out for me. Scheduling and some clerical tasks, you can pump that stuff out with it. And for speech sound disorders articulation, it can create some stories for you that are heavily laden with particular phonemes. So those, maybe you people in the audience have some other ways that you've used it, or if not, give some of those areas that I just suggested a shot.
We're still smarter than generative AI, and so you have to do a sensibility check against what gets spit out, right?
Yeah, such a great point. You've got to tailor whatever it spits out. You've got to read it and not take it, take it with a grain of salt. Not take it at exactly face value, but tweak it to the kid, tweak it to what tweak it to what absolutely want to tailor for. So there's Chat GPT, Claude, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and Perplexity are the tools that we are going to demonstrate in this work.
I have used ChatGPT to help me save time, honestly, right? So I'll go into chat and I'll describe what we've been working on in speech therapy. And then I give it a prompt like, write 10 problematic scenarios that have to do with X, Y, and Z. And it's so cool because I save tons of time trying to be creative by myself versus that gives me kind of like a template, and then like you said, to use my brain and my degree to be able to like adjust it to that very specific individual and what she or he needs in order to get better at that goal.
So you could just when you were talking there, I thought of I might include this in the presentation now. Uh, Use stopping by woods on a snowy evening and give me 10 questions that are higher levels in Bloom's taxonomy,
Yeah,
and it'll do that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the things that we've heard from another podcast guest about, especially generative AI, is that we should all be using it as a ladder, not a crutch. So a ladder to get us higher, but not a crutch to help us walk.
You can add that to your presentation, Perry.
Yeah, okay, I'll add that to the presentation. As soon as we get off here, I'm going to take some notes about what I've learned here and add them. Mhm.
What do you think that SLP leaders need to pay attention to relative to generative AI? You've mentioned the ethics, there are privacy concerns. Do they need to write policy, district operating guidelines?
Yeah, so North Carolina, the Department of Public Instruction has a policy around it. I would suggest that school districts do the same, and then speech pathologists. there's an opportunity for all the speech team together to work on what we are going to use it for as a ladder and not a crutch, and what we are not going to use it for. What are the ethical uses? What are the non-ethical uses? And then do some training around that. Like that's what Josh and I are going to do. We're going to talk for part of the time, but we're going to set the audience on tasks to use it themselves and see uh, what they can come up with. And so I I think that would be a valuable use of time in like a speech meeting to come up with, here are some uses that we see are ethical and very useful to the SLP, and let's practice using them.
So, how would you advise folks who are in formal leadership roles or folks who are wanting to get into leadership roles that are wanting to influence the district's incorporation of AI for their speech pathology efforts?
come come with solutions. Like if you have problems, you need to come with solutions too. You're thought of as whiny, complainy if you just complain, but you're thought of as a problem solver if you come with a problem, a complaint, and a solution. So that still works for your real pointed question. If you are either a leader or wanting to be a leader, maybe you're going to be the school district's AI speech specialist, and that's how you're going to distinguish yourself, and you're going to be a leader in that. And so, do your homework, figure things out, and say, here's what we can do, and here's some problems, but here are some solutions too. Or could I do a presentation on AI? I think it would be really useful. I heard this weird guy with curly gray hair, and I want to do a presentation at our speech meeting because I think we could really use AI to save time as a ladder, but not a crutch, to improve our services to kids. That's another real point of advocacy for you. If you can spin whatever you want to talk about to improve services to kids, that is a very compelling argument. If you want to talk about like improving, even improving working conditions for speech pathologists, because you're going to be better at providing services to kids, and you're going to help kids meet goals better and get dismissed. And so just spin whatever you want in the direction of improved services to kids.
And I love that example of how you can take an emergent thing like generative AI and get excited about it and use it as an opportunity to step into a leadership role if that
Right,
is something that
right,
you aspire to, by developing some expertise, or at least a little bit more than everybody else has,
right.
pulling everybody along, being excited about it, being good at it with all of the ethics and the procedural guidelines, or being willing to help write procedures, because operating procedures are no fun to write. Handbooks are no fun to write. But if you're willing to step in there and say, here's a paragraph on AI, can we edit this together? And then others will come to you as the expert on AI, which just promotes a cycle of improvement for you. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, you're in a leadership role, or you're being asked to participate in committees outside of speech language pathology because other people have heard that now
Right.
you know about this. And so it's a great stair step into leadership if that's one of the things you're looking for
Yeah.
as.
And when you were saying that, I was thinking at the very same time, you could do your AI presentation for OTs and PTs and maybe school psychologists too in your school district. And maybe you might rocket yourself up to be like the assistive technology specialist or something because of, maybe your good skills in OGCOM. And there are all kinds of things in OGCOM you can use AI for too. So anyway.
I
Yeah.
love the idea of writing your own job description. So
Sure.
maybe what people
Right.
need to do, Perry, is go to your website and pull that job description
Mhm.
forward
Yeah.
and then
And pump
edit
some of
it.
those things in. Yeah.
Yeah, and based on their areas of interest and really being creative and bold to think like what would their perfect SLP job look like in the school system and
Absolutely.
then kind of building from there that expertise, the practice opportunities of giving trainings, of coaching, of mentoring, and then just seeing where it goes.
Absolutely. That's a great use for AI. And another opportunity to advocate for yourself and the other people of your same discipline in the district, and maybe past the district level, use the state association perhaps.
So, Perry, Natalie has end of podcast questions that she always asks. But before she asks that, I just want to make a plug for, again, the Renaissance man of speech language pathology that you are, because we haven't talked about the fact that you are a renowned author. And so I want you to tell us about your two books that you have authored, therapy books, and about the special spirit that is described in those books.
Yeah, so I promised people that I did not prompt her to do that. So they're on my website. The two books are on my website. They're called Rudy and the Butterflies and Rudy's New Job. And Rudy was a horse of mine who truly was obsessed by butterflies. And he dumped me several times because I was going straight ahead and he was chasing a butterfly off to the left or right. And he was pretty quick on his feet. And if a butterfly happened by, I got dumped. So anyway, as Judy said, they are therapy materials. They are published by Dynamic Resources. You can search that. There are all kinds of other books that are therapy materials at Dynamic Resources. And then the second book is Rudy's New Job. And it is Rudy retires from his first job, and then he's not happy in his retirement. He's kind of gloomy. And so uh, the his caretaker decides that he should be a therapeutic riding horse. And Annabelle, who is really one of the children that I work with, uses an augmented communication device, and she and Rudy fall in love with each other, and they are great. And there's going to be one more book in the series, in the Rudy series, so it'll be another probably couple of years, but there are a ton of therapy materials in the book, and then if you go to the Dynamic Resources website, there are ever more. Shari Robertson is the owner of Dynamic Resources, and she and I keep coming up with new things to add to there. So anyway, thanks for the plug.
Okay, so speaking of books,
Yeah.
right? Can you share with us like a book or a movie or music that you feel really inspired by recently?
So I haven't finished it because I don't want to finish it because I liked it so much. Listening to Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. And so if you don't know Trevor Noah, he's a comedian, but he was the host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central
Mm.
at night, and he's super smart. He was born in Soweto in South Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa, and born, of very meager means, and just provided all kinds of opportunities for himself over time and took advantage of things, and then moved to this country and is um, is a very, very smart man. So his book is really interesting and pretty motivational, and I've just really so I am listening to it. I am not a good reader. Like reading for pleasure is not really a pleasure for me. I have to read so much for work, and reading journals and stuff, that when I read for pleasure, I get books on recording. So Born a Crime, I saw him in person here. The Wake Forest University has a speaking series, and it was not a comedy show. It was a, sort of interview, much like this, a podcast type interview where there was an interviewer and they talked about lots of political and just those kinds of questions. He was a fantastic interview.
So is it actually him? Does he actually read the book?
Yes, and he actually reads the book, and he has, a South African accent. He's got a great voice too, so it's really easy to listen to. Yeah,
So we ask all of our guests this one final question. So to you, what is leadership in one word?
I'm gonna say, mm, yeah, I'm gonna say honesty.
That works. Thank you so much, Perry, for your time and sharing so many
Or
great insights today. I feel like we covered a whole lot of topics.
we covered a lot of ground. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for asking me to do it. It is my pleasure, Natalie. It's so nice to meet you. It was a pleasure, and um, Judy, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you in Seattle in not very long.
Listening back to this episode made me realize that, yeah, we did cover a lot of ground. Everything from recruitment and retention to the benefit of having SLP meetings with our team to artificial intelligence and how you can develop your own job description in order to find the best fit for you in school districts. We encourage you to check out Perry's website to see all of his fabulous resources and take a sneak peek at his books that he's published. There's a lot of nuggets in this episode, and we hope that you are able to make connections with these and maybe even forward it to some of your peers and colleagues and leaders so that they too can get inspired by Perry's perspective. Until next time, take care.